Do you have trouble with people taking your professional opinion seriously? If so, this is the video series for you. If you tuned in last week, you know that we already went over what to do when an administrator or a colleague is having a little bit of a frustration with your professional decision making and what to do about it. If you missed that video, there's going to be a link to it in the description for this one below so that you can go back and watch it first if you'd like, or after you finish this video. In this week's video, we're going to go over what to do when a patient, client, or customer is unhappy with your decision making and how to handle that. So I hope that you will find this second part of this video series to be equally useful, and I would love to hear your opinions on it. So please let me know if you find this video to be helpful to you. All right, let's dive right in to our third scenario, which is dealing with a patient or client or customer who is unhappy with your decision making. Last one, let's go through whether this is a patient who is very unhappy with my decision. And let's go over this in two different scenarios. So I had a patient recently, maybe a couple of months ago, with a really just complicated medical history that kind of broke my heart. It was like everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. And we had been seeing her in therapy for a very long time. In home health, that's very common that we might see somebody for 6 or 8 months because the therapy is not as intense. So it may take a little longer to reach those goals, and that's perfectly normal. We had been seeing her for several months at this point, and I was not finding a lot of noticeable improvement. Nothing that would make a significant difference in how she was living her daily life. And we did get to a certain point where I just had to say, enough's enough. We have to discharge. We have to pull out. This is not, I know that the patient is saying that she wants therapy. She was always very nice to let us come by, but most of the time when we were there, it was a lot of, well, I can't do that because it hurts. Well, I can't do that because it hurts. Well, I can't do that because it hurts. Well, I can try that. And then after about 10 seconds of it, we have to stop. It hurts too much. So there wasn't a lot of productive therapy happening in these sessions. And she wanted to keep going. Her daughter really wanted us to keep going. And so did her husband. So this was a very tricky situation for me because my professional judgment was that this was no longer appropriate, but trying to get 3 people who are all that I'm in their home and who are very upset with this decision to get on board with it and to understand it without it turning into a customer complaint or some sort of negative backlash was tricky. And I really had to explain why it was not appropriate for us to continue to do therapy, because she was already independent with the exercises that we'd given, because her pain was so limiting that most of the things that we wanted to do with her, we could not do. She did have a diagnosis of Parkinson's, which the family had misunderstood at some point along the way as being a terminal diagnosis. And I'm still not really sure why they were ever under the impression that this was a terminal diagnosis, because they kept saying things like, we're just so surprised she's still alive. So there was some definite re-education that had to happen there to help them to understand that Parkinson's is not necessarily progressive. You can get to a certain point and maintain that level for forever. Getting worse is not necessarily always going to happen once you reach a certain level. It can, but it may not. It's definitely not a terminal diagnosis, so I don't really know where that came into the picture, but the fact that she's still alive is not surprising and should not be surprising. This isn't necessarily going to shorten her lifespan by any noticeable amount. There was a lot of re-education that had to happen there. But there was a lot of education that had to happen too about what therapy is and what it's not, what it can do and what it can't, what it's expected to do, what the insurance is expecting us to do. And this patient's daughter knew enough to throw in that home maintenance program thing. Well, can't you put her on a maintenance program? And I truly, genuinely, in my heart, did not feel that that was an appropriate option for this patient for two reasons. First of all, she was not at any sort of risk for decline from us pulling out, in my opinion. Now, her daughter did not agree with that opinion, but this was my professional opinion based on my professional judgment as the person who is educated to make this decision. Not emotionally, I'm worried that mom's going to get worse, and I just want to, I know the keywords to say to keep the ball rolling, which was the instance. This person had a little bit of an in the know to know the keywords to say to try to keep that ball rolling. But I was very clear, she is not at a risk for an immediate decline because she's not that much better than when we started, and she is independent in the exercises that we've given her. And I did put a caveat. Again, putting a caveat helps a lot. When I said, if we discharge and within 2 months she has significantly regressed, we can come back in. And I'll be happy to come back in at that point. But I have not seen anything up until this point that would indicate to me at all that she is at a risk for a rapid decline or a rehospitalization if we pull out. So I don't think that the maintenance program is necessary. The second reason that I don't think that it's necessary or appropriate is that there is nothing that we are doing with her that you all can't do. And most of what we are trying to do with her in therapy, she can't tolerate because of her high levels of pain. So until you can get her pain, specifically in her left shoulder, if you can get that level of pain under a certain level where she can tolerate doing this and this, at that point, there will be more potential rehabilitation that we can do with her. And I will be happy to come back in at that point. But her shoulder has to get to the point where she can tolerate this and this. Otherwise, there is no point in us continuing with this. So I have to be very clear in my mind why I'm making this decision. And I have to be willing and able to communicate that clearly to the other person and stand my ground when necessary. I am always open to alternate options, but in this instance, I felt very strongly that an alternate option besides discharge was not appropriate for this patient. I did have a conversation with them about going to a different setting that I'm not going to get into here that I gave to them as an alternate. So it wasn't necessarily an alternate on my decision about discharging the patient, but it was an alternate to the family of something else that they could do besides continuing to pursue home health as the best option. So my willingness to entertain an alternate option had to do with their alternate option in this case instead of my alternate option for my decision making. Last scenario, I have had patients before who have been very much ready for hospice. That has become obvious that it is their most appropriate setting because they have, certain level of diagnoses where it's just become very apparent that that's what is best for them. But sometimes it can be really hard because hospice does not come with a therapy component. And a lot of the times the patients can get really scared that it means that they're giving up, that not doing therapy means that they are giving up, and they feel on a certain level that it's ushering in this timeline of their potential death. That if they're not continuously putting forth this effort and fighting, that it will result in a faster end point for them. And so sometimes they will tell me, I don't want to go to hospice because I want to keep doing therapy. But in my professional opinion, the therapy is no longer appropriate. It was appropriate, but has reached a point where it's no longer appropriate. And I will have to have that really tough conversation with them. And talking about transitioning to hospice, we can save for another video. But when it comes to not wanting to give up the therapy in this instance, it's very understandable because I recognize that there's a lot of fear that comes along with it. But most of the time, if this is the decision that's been made, and this is the suggestion that's being made, that person's body just can't take it anymore. And what I will usually do in that instance to help ease this decision, this kind of idea of leaving no stone unturned, is to help walk them through the things that we have already done to try to help them and kind of go through their journey a little bit with them to help give them a solid picture in their mind that they really truly have tried everything. So I might talk to them about, we've been trying to do therapy with you for a while, but in these last 4 or 6 weeks, you've had so many hospitalizations that by the time we come to see you, you don't have anything left. It's not your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. You're exhausted. You've been through so much, and your body is working in overtime just to try to recover from everything you've been through. And it just doesn't have anything left to give for therapy. Do you remember when I tried to come and see you 2 weeks ago when you just got home from the hospital and we couldn't even get you on the side of the bed because you were just that exhausted? Yes, I remember. Do you remember a month ago when you came from the hospital and I tried to, we tried to do things then? You were able to sit up, but you didn't have it in you to stand. Yeah, I remember. You're doing everything you can. And I love that you are such a fighter and that you are so strong and that you want to give this your all, but you are giving it your all. You're doing everything you can. But right now, everything you can means just trying to make it from day to day to recover from all of these medical issues that you have right now. And again, with that caveat and that alternate option, sometimes, again, I'm not going to keep going with therapy because it's not appropriate. It's not truly in their best interest in that moment. Hospice is in their best interest, and I don't want therapy to stand in the way, which it would be doing at that point. But I will give them this alternate where I say, listen, just because you go on hospice does not mean that you are stuck on hospice. We do have patients that will transition to hospice, and maybe they'll have a turnaround where they actually start to feel better and they get some energy back and they truly are ready for therapy at that point. And they may transition back to home health because now they're ready for therapy. So just because you're making this decision now, because it is what your body needs and it's what your family needs to get this extra support, it does not mean that you can't come back to home health if your body is able to stand it in a few months or a few weeks. We have to make our decision based on what's in front of us. We have to make our decision based on what's happening right now. And right now, your body just can't take the therapy. It's just too much. But that doesn't mean that something couldn't change. And if it does change, we'll be right here waiting for you. And I'll be so happy to get you started back with therapy down the road if you're able to recover and get stronger and you're ready for it. So I'm not giving up on you, and I'm not telling you that you'll never have the option to have therapy again, but I'm just saying that right this second, I truly believe that going to hospice is what's best for you because you're going to get all these extra services and all this extra help that's so much more than what we can give you right now. But we don't know what the future holds, right? We don't know if you're going to get better and stronger and have a turnaround. But if that happens, you have every option to come back to home health in the future to get that therapy. And so sometimes just giving that person that information that it doesn't have to be permanent, that going to hospice doesn't mean it doesn't have to be permanent. Sometimes it will give them the peace of mind to just let what needs to happen in that moment happen, and to not feel so desperate to cling on to this idea that I have to keep pushing and I have to keep forcing my body and I have to do the therapy right now. Because if your body can't take it, it can't take it. And you can't ask more of your body than what it has to give. So why don't we just let hospice love on you? Let hospice just love on you and take care of you and give you everything you need, and let's see what happens. So in that way, I'm kind of giving them an alternate, that just because you're doing this now does not mean that it has to be this way forever. It doesn't mean that you're never going to have the option of therapy or home health again. It just means that right now it's not what's best. And so that conversation has helped so many people feel so much more peace of mind about transitioning to hospice. And that would be a different example of a patient who's not mad, that they're like, I want to, you need to keep coming because otherwise something bad's going to happen. This is an issue where the person is just genuinely scared that if they stop, that it's the end of the line and that everything's just going to fall apart and that there's no way to come back from that decision. A lot of times when people have fear or anxiety around a decision that you are making, that fear and anxiety can be really wrapped up in this idea that once you go down this road, there's no coming back. And so a lot of times if you can help explain to them, I'm totally willing to do it if this, this, and this, you're giving them some very clear benchmarks to either reach for or to realize, I'm not going to be able to do that. But if you can explain to them clearly, you have to be able to do this, this, and this before I can come in and provide any additional benefit. You're holding a boundary, you're holding a professional boundary for yourself that says, if you just say, well, if you get better, if you get better is extremely vague. They could wake up feeling like they've got more energy the next morning and go, see, I'm better. Now you have to come here. And so giving very specific check boxes, very specific lines in the sand. You have to be able to do this, this, and this. And then I can absolutely come in and do what you're asking. Then it works for both of you. Because you're able to come back and see, but I said you had to do this, this, and this, and you're not there yet. Let me know when you are there, and I'll be happy to come back. And in their mind, they can either recognize, okay, I'm not going to be able to get there. They are right. This is not a good option for me. Or it gives them something very clear to work toward, where they can now say, okay, she said if I can do this, this, and this, so those are my goals, and that's what I'm going to do. And as soon as I reach all three of those goals, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to expect her to come in. And you should at that point go, all right, you did what I asked. I love it. I'm so proud of you. Way to go. Let's get to work and be ready to do whatever it was. So those can't just be arbitrary things in your mind, again, with being really clear and educating people on why those three things are your requirements, will help to keep everything really clear for everyone involved. So I hope that this series has been really helpful. This is a lot of information. But I think that it's hopefully very, very helpful for you to be able to communicate better on all levels, whether it's people up the ladder, people who are, colleagues of yours, or people who are patients or clients or customers of yours, to help to communicate your professional expertise, your opinions, your boundaries and your decisions and why they are what they are, and maybe how to convey bad news or difficult news or news that is not necessarily well received, and how to give alternates or how to give benchmarks to people so that you can be really clear with them about what you need in order to fulfill their request. The more that you can make it, I'm not saying no arbitrarily. I'm not saying no because I'm not willing. I'm saying no because it's not appropriate. That is two completely different things. If someone feels that you're just saying no because you're not willing, now you're the bad guy. If you're saying no because it's not appropriate, it's very hard for someone to argue with you that you must do something that's inappropriate. On any level, that is very difficult for someone to argue with you because it goes against our nature about what would be considered ethical or reasonable. So if you can be really clear about why you made your decision, what benchmarks or requirements you might need in order to change your mind, and giving people alternates when appropriate so that they know that you're not saying no forever. You're saying no until the situation changes. That will help people to trust you, that you're not just not willing to help, but that you have certain standards in your mind that have to be met. And that a lot of those come back to your professional ethics. I am not just going to sit here and just waste Medicare money and company resources and my time and your time and my PT assistant's time just because you want it, just because you want therapy to keep coming in and, just doing the same old song and dance every day, even though it's not appropriate. If you want it, I'll do it, whatever. No. So you are setting yourself up as being someone who adheres to a very specific standard of conduct and ethics and professionalism and morality. I'm not just going to sit here and waste somebody's money just because somebody's putting pressure on me. I'm not going to say yes to something that is truly against the standards of my profession just because somebody wants me to. I'm going to do what's right, but that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to compromise or to come up with alternate options or to, give a few options here. It's not that I'm not willing to work with you, but I'm not willing to do things that are unethical or unprofessional or illegal. I'm not willing to do things that are wrong, but I'm totally willing to help. So let's see how we can mesh those two things together. Hopefully this gives you a lot to work with. If you have more questions, please let me know. I'm always excited to answer direct questions from people and help to provide some clarity. So let me know what you think about this video, and I will see you next week.